Hey everyone, it's 2026. How's that? Another year, another number. You know, let's hope that we can make this year special, make this year productive for ourselves, but also do what we can for others. Um, it's really difficult to well when you're not in a position of everything being perfect or everything being fine. It's difficult to think, oh, this year's going to be great, but it's going to be great. You know, we make it. We make it. With all the things going on in the world, with all the things we're having to deal with, they create blocks and barriers preventing us from getting to where we need to be to grow, to heal. And lots of people have told me over the years is to focus on what you can affect or have control or change. And that these other things that can upset you should not be the thing that defines your ability to get to where you need to be anyway. And it is a powerful message. It's also a loaded message too, because what it's saying is don't be upset about bigger things, bigger problems. Most of these things are out of our control. So in a way, on one side, it prevents you from being able to even thinking about this stuff is upsetting, because so from one perspective is it makes complete sense, by the way. That's what I'm trying to say. But so when people say focus on what the things that you can do, the things that you can affect change on, things that you can make better, that's a very powerful message. And it really is important, because there's so many barriers in the world, and there's so many things that need attention, and those things conflict. And then on top of that, you have people getting upset about things. I get upset about things. We all get upset about things. I had possums eat all my cassava and my taro recently. Not all of it, most of it. But what I learned from that was I need to share with, I have to understand that these animals will eat. I'm growing food, and I have to share it with the native wild animals that live in my environment. I have a possum that lives in my house, and I love this animal. Every night when I hear it go out, and in the morning it comes home, seeing it, you know, most years get to see it raising its baby and teaching it how to navigate the world, and it's a beautiful thing. And then, you know, between the possum and the bush turkeys, or possums and bush turkeys and other animals, they will, it's their food. They see food, they need to eat it. And so I'm not going to give up, but I'm learning, and I want to actually grow more food so that the possum has lots of food, and then it's not going to eat every plant. Like if I don't have, and this is a good thing, you know. So this is something that I can change. This is something I can affect. So if I make it better for all of us, it will be better for all of us. And things are really good, and things are also really difficult. And what I've found is focusing on the positive is a good thing. And working at it, knowing that not everything's going to work out, you know, but by going through the actions of making an effort, there's a good chance that things will work out at times, and that gives a good reason to just keep trying and keep pushing and keep doing things in that positive manner, so that you're, when I say you're, I'm saying me or anyone, you know, to know that, like, within life and within having some expectations is good, but you're working towards it to learn how to make those expectations better by going through the difficulty of understanding that things don't work out often, and that it's through, and I'm learning this by learning permaculture and how to grow food, is, you know, you learn, and you have to go through a certain amount of pain and putting in that energy into something, and then having to make decisions. And the more you learn, the better your expectations are met, because you're able to put in that effort that you've learned about. Now you can, it's, for me, what I've see is you learn mostly by doing, and you learn by learning from others, whether it's in person or whether it's through learning through people sharing, whether it's reading books or reading things that people have shared, whether it's going through doing a formal class, whether it's watching YouTube videos showing you how to do something. And those things are really great. And that's so it's combined. You have to do, you still have to go through the trials of understanding that you can put all these things in place, and nature will show you that not everything works out. And it gets better over time, because I've learned so much this year about growing food and what not to do, and what can be done. And a big thing I've learned about that is, and what I had learned through doing a course is that if you prepare all the necessary things to make something, give it the best chance, then the chances are that things will work out, and you can keep increasing that and diversifying that. But the more you do, the more effort and time you spend on trying to get a desired outcome. And that if you bring it back to make things more effortless, because this is a key to actually being able to, do the things that you want to do, whether it's exercise, art, socializing, learning something new so that you can, get a job in a certain area, or it's such an important thing to be able to do, is to have this sort of openness, but also understand that you have effort and effortlessness, and that both can yield nothing. But rarely does that happen. And if either do, that's something you learn from. But the more effort you put in and the more you learn, the better the outcome. And it doesn't just, it's not like you can follow a recipe. When something is spread out over time and has all of these factors and unknown things, like I'm using the analogy of growing food and plants and nurturing, is that there are these unknown, and so they're the things that you should consider, all of the possibilities. And this is where you look at your environment. What are the things that could happen? And then you learn more about that. But then, rather than worrying about things that may happen, focus on making all the other things that are required just as important. But one thing I've found, and this is because there's been some difficult times this year, I would put in a lot of effort, and then if I wasn't able to keep up the maintenance on just checking the garden every day, watering it every day, or when it needs it, checking it, does it need watering? No, yes. showing up, doing that time to make sure that I'm giving it that attention, even if it like, and this is a beautiful permaculture thing is that you don't have to spend all this time on something. You can set it up so that nature does its work, and you be present, and you watch, you observe, and then when things need attention, that's when you can give it attention. So showing up, making sure that when you put in effort, you can keep it going. Understanding though, things can be difficult. Things can get in your road and you don't have that time. You don't have the energy. Trauma causes us to sometimes not be able to focus our attention the way that we should. But the more that you can, the better the outcome and the better it is overall. And so, I've looked at everything I've learned just in this last year has been amazing as far as getting back to growing food and learning about what I need to be doing to put in the effort, but to make it effortless. So then I don't see things, not like things that may have been failure to me in the past, that may have in the past caused me to be upset or to give up or to almost give up, become disillusioned, all those things. I have learned to accept, and whether it's not just about observing the external, it's self-reflect and observe the internal. And then those things can balance each other out. It's very easy in this world to become upset and to divert our attention from things that we really need to be focusing on, because we are focusing on something that is often set up to make us feel upset or to take away our attention. That's a big thing, and this pervades almost everything in our modern life. And for good reason, we get upset because things are getting changed and turned over, and we see things that we don't agree with, or we feel like people are being neglected and they're not being heard. There's all these things that we can be getting upset about, but if we somehow can resolve both things, is focusing on what is the most important for ourselves, and for those around us, Basic Glitch is here. Awesome. Basic Glitch says, hi, happy new year, my friend. I wish you luck in the new year. Thank you very much. And likewise, my friend. Like, I saw the artwork you did recently, and that was really awesome. And my last laptop, I made it a canvas and painted all over it. I've still got it somewhere. It's pretty cool. But I just keep going with that. It looks awesome. and the phone case as well. I reckon that's awesome. See, creating things and sharing like your creations is a great thing, and I've neglected that for a while. You know, I haven't been doing that, and I've got to get back to it. So, you know, 2026, I'll be making art, you know, and there's a whole bunch of projects that I sort of neglected for a while, and you know, this year is going to be amazing. Like, I'm so excited for this year. Is that I have these amazing things that are going to happen, and I've had all this support to help make that happen. And you know, I appreciate everyone here, and I'm excited to have a whole new chapter in my life, like a whole new thing. You know, I can hear my own voice sounding different. I feel like a vulnerability in my voice. I'm talking about things that it's difficult to talk about, you know. Basic Glitch says, thank you very much. I plan on doing that. It makes me kind of excited. Also, I bought myself a guitar. Awesome. With a smiley face. I'm rooting for you, and you are doing awesome job in lives and people. Oh, thank you so much, Basic Glitch. I appreciate that so much. And it's so awesome to hear you bought a guitar, you know, and I can't wait to hear like some music that you make on it, you know, when you're ready, you know, when you're ready to share, please, like, that would be awesome. And that will inspire me to play guitar more, you know. So I've got to get back into it. I'm looking at my guitars at the other end of the room, and I'm like, you know, they'll be a big part of this year, is playing music. And I can't wait to, you know, I'm going to become a father this year, and you know, I want to learn some lullabies so I can like play some really calming music and stuff like that for the baby. So, but that's what it's all about, you know, having, I mean, a few years ago, I resolved, it was like an oath I made to myself that I publicly proclamated, and that was people, purpose, person. You know, do what you can for others. That's people. Purpose, make art something for me. And person is continue to grow and learn and get stronger and heal. And that's something that I need to make, you know, remake that, or continue that, push myself to make that something that I think about every day, and I will do that, because it's easy to let things lapse or slide or not become that prominent thing that we make our core values and goals that we use to remind us, we got to keep reminding ourselves, this is what I'm doing this for. It's not just for me, it's for them. It's not just for, you know, it's not just for now, it's for the future, you know. Glitch says, oh, this would be awesome and great. And I didn't know what else. Great idea. Awesome. Yeah, exactly. This, and this, see, I got, you know, over New Year's, I got sort of in that, I was reflecting on stuff, and it wasn't so much personal stuff, it was the world that I was worried about. And I was worried about the way things were going. And not just the way the trajectory or trends of certain big things, but also how it has affected the whole world on a lower level, that interpersonal level that we all connect with. And this is where it comes back to focusing on what you can focus on, and allow that to ripple out. And again, this is stuff this is where, with permaculture and horticulture, is like, these things are powerful because they're, it allows things to grow, and because you're focusing your attention on the things that matter, and then that way you can improve things. Even, you know, there were weeds that grew up amongst the corn I planted, and I didn't know what they were at first. I'm like, oh, at first I thought they were soybean, and I'm like, because the app told me, you know, the identifying app, and I was like, how can it be soybean? And then it changed to milkweed, and then I'm like, oh, well, that's classic. It's milkweed, or Mexican fire plant, and it's growing with the corn. So that's a natural thing. Like, this has probably happened for thousands of years, and unfortunately, milkweed it's a poisonous plant, but it also restricts the growth of the other plants around it. So at some point, I can't keep it there, but I'm not pulling it out of the ground. I'm letting it, because it's helping the other plants and it's doing its own thing. But I do understand that it's, you know, it's, at some point I'll have to actually deal with it somehow. And but plants all work together like this, and sometimes they do, like I said, like this particular weed actually is, it's not so beneficial. It actually damages the plants around, it suppresses the plants around it. So it's like, well, what do I do? And I'm like, well, I'll manage it within the natural ecosystem of the garden. And so all these things I'm learning. But the beauty of it is, it's created shade and protected the other plants. So even though if under the ground in the soil, it's sending out, suppressing chemicals into the ground to stop other plants from growing, it's not really doing that. I'm seeing that it's actually coexisting fine with the other plants. So I'm going to learn more about this plant now. How, often weeds are demonized as being these bad things, but I'm learning that, they can help, and often they do. And most of the time, they are actually doing good things, but they are categorized a certain way so that they're not able to be just left to do their own thing. So just that was something that in the last few days I was having. Well, yesterday actually, I learned more about this plant, and then realized that so what do? I just work with it all. I keep planting more plants and get more things growing, and they'll all work together. And things that don't work together, it'll be evident. So some things, because that is a very real thing, I've got mint growing in, and that was there when I got the plot there at the community garden, and in certain spots it's fine. It's like, but what it does is it starves other things. So like, it's not suitable if I'm wanting to grow lots of different plants. So I have to work with it. And, it's a really good medicinal plant. Like, I can make tea out of it. I'm not making oils or anything, but I can use this plant and I can plant it up, and I can, I can give people mint in a pot that I've got. So rather than just pulling it out of the ground, I want to make it something, Basic Glitch says, yeah, just like with people. That's why I always say that there might be just cure in the poison venomous, just a cure in the poisonous venoms. Something like from snake poison, you have the antidote, or form poisonous fungus in small amounts. Yes, exactly. Cure. That was, yeah, Glitch was just correcting that. Yeah, no, that's it. So that's a perfect point there, and exactly. It could be doing these other beneficial things that I don't even know about, and I haven't really learnt more about, So it's funny how, like, with plants, like, if you can't eat it, then it's seen as, being bad. But then there's all these weeds, or what's labeled as weeds, are highly nutritious food, and what have kept people alive for thousands of years, being this nutritious, full of vitamins or amino acids and proteins and things. And they just grow in harsh environments, and yet we don't eat them anymore. And so I'm learning about getting that stuff to grow and to all these plants that we've neglected, for so long, that are so nutritious, and they grow easily, and they're tasty. And they're hardy, So, and that's another thing too, is, if when you have bare earth, or like, in a lot of ways, weeds are just things that go in to a place to fill a spot that was made perfect for it. And so it's not like it's their fault, depending on, like, you can still categorize things as being beneficial or non-beneficial, and that's what you learn over time. But when you go into this, I'm constantly being corrected about, like, things that have some beneficial and some negative effects, and it's like, well, and then it becomes difficult. It's like, well, what do? You take the good with the bad, or the bad with the good. And also know that in depending on the situation, and this is where we can apply our foresight, is that we can go, well, this is beneficial or non-beneficial. And that's how, like, as an analogy to, like, our life, is that we can look at anything in our life, and then we can see something as having merit. For instance, with grasses and with weeds, they actually go in and heal and prepare the soil for the later growing, for the trees to grow later, for the plants that we can plant for food later. And then when the soil's prepared to a certain point, other things take over, and then they disappear anyway. And so it's a great way to look at habits. Sometimes that, there can be things that, and that's a signifier. So when behaviors change, whether it's changing your diet, your daily activities, how you socialize, whether you're focusing on learning things and expanding your mind, whether you're focusing on what's going on in the world, when you notice a change, you can then trace it back, and then see that there is something else, and then know that, when other things change, that disappears naturally. It's succession, and that there is this natural continual succession. And this is something that happens not in humans with our behavior and our growth. It happens in nature with plants and animals. It happens in geology, with soil and rocks and volcanism and all these things. It happens in solar systems. You have this scale invariance, which means things can appear the same at different scales, and that's how we can connect. We can see certain relationships, and it doesn't always mean that there is scale, I forget the word, but it's not everything scales. Not everything can be expanded or contracted to a point where laws, that there are things where things change at a certain magnitude, you know, but within that there is this thing that this things change and things are a certain way for a certain while, but at a certain point, and it's another thing too, is where you can see that when you do identify something that is causing harm, that is draining energy or robbing energy or time, you know, or preventing something, then you can intervene, you know, and it's difficult to do when, you know, with trauma, and it's difficult to like just stop and change, or, you know, but when you do identify these things, you know, that can be the thing that helps get to the next point. And also know that there's a certain point in time where, as long as you keep doing other things that are healthy and beneficial, it will go towards a positive. So, you know, what you see in nature is with using the analogy of weeds, is that there are certain weeds that have got, it's like they have superpowers, you know, they can climb trees, pull them down, you know, they can stop other things from growing, you know, they can send out lots of seeds and just spread everywhere. And there's all these things that give them this superpower over other plants. And there are times where you can get a runaway effect, where in a certain environment, you know, like a fire goes through, and then in that empty space, the weed comes in and becomes super dominant, and then it also has superpowers. So it's very hard, takes a long time for that place to actually go back to a diverse, interconnected environment. And, you know, and this is where the signifiers are good. So this is where being observant, looking at your life, you know, what are the things that I'm doing that are getting me to where I want to be? What are the things that are helping me heal? What are the things holding me back? You know, and, you know, in the past, I've had, you know, whether it's smoking or alcohol, that's been a thing, you know, kept me in a place. So how would I break out of that? It would be a slow progression to keeping on doing these other things, and eventually that disappears because I keep working at it. And so I don't know, it's a good way to think about how, because we're constantly distracted in our lives, you know. Trauma itself is a massive distraction. It is the biggest distraction. Getting, you know, flashbacks or triggers, also healing the nervous system from being, you know, kept in a state, and strengthening the mind, and the parts of the nervous system where it interacts, to strengthen it, is a big powerful thing for healing. And, you know, for people that are in a really difficult spot with complex trauma, it's hard to get to that point, to like really do the strength building, but like you do it by starting, you do it by doing what you can. And then over time, you get stronger and stronger, and eventually you can get to that point where you can calm, you can grow and strengthen and heal. But it takes a long time. And it's a good thing knowing that it's all possible. We can heal. We can grow. There are things that can be barriers or limitations to our life, but that doesn't have to define us completely. By accepting certain things, that then allows us to work within our means and then to grow in a sustainable or pragmatic way. You know, I use the analogy of the fish that swims upstream doesn't get there if it just heads upstream and goes as fast as it can. It'll get worn out and a bear will come along and eat it, you know? Or a fisherman will catch it because it's hungry because it used all its energy trying to swim upstream. The fish swims upstream by waiting in the shallows, by taking its time, by taking rests, knowing when it needs to not have that one single focus be everything, because that then becomes its own end. So pacing, and this comes with trauma. It's knowing that when trauma triggers become too upsetting, is sometimes it's best to just rest, and then know that, give yourself time, but when it gets to a certain time, know that I've got to keep moving on again. I've got to keep swimming upstream. I can't wait too much longer, you know? So it's finding that balance. But we do live in a world where our attention and our focus is connected with emotions and at what we care about, to the point where we focus not so much on what is important. We lose the importance of what matters. And it's, some of this is done intentionally. Well, a lot of it is done, whether it's marketing or propaganda, or just sensationalism with mass media, emotion, like capturing our imagination, capturing our attention, capturing our emotions. If we can be calm and resolute without allowing ourselves to get upset or reactionary, and then we can take a time to think before we respond, it's very difficult still, considering if you're being hypersensitive or to have certain triggers. And that's even more of a reason to be able to try to work on those things. You know, resisting the desired effect of something external that does not serve us is a very powerful thing. And I know when I get upset, when I get reactionary, when I get emotional, I often get upset, not just at the situation, but I get upset at myself. I feel like I failed myself because I got upset when, if I could just stay calm and rational. And when I say upset, I get upset about the world, so I get upset about injustice. But then I get upset when I can't talk about the injustice. I get upset when lies are being told to us. I get upset by the manipulation that goes on. I get upset about the corruption that goes on. It's like an endless thing. And all of these things, the more that being able to channel that, like channel it to a point where the focus is back to what matters. And that's, for me, being able, like, if I'm upset about what's on the news and then I'm not able to be there for other people, then the getting upset about what's on the news has prevented someone else from having my attention and my help or my care. And then it's that same thing, if I'm not making art because I'm getting upset about something else, I'm lacking. I'm not getting that nourishment, And if I'm getting upset by the corruption or injustice, and I'm not focusing on myself and growing and becoming stronger and learning new things and, going from here to there because I was too busy stuck, not because of me. Well, I've allowed myself to be stuck because I got sidetracked by that diversion. And it comes from everywhere. It's all across everything. Even it's even a trap to become too focused on disengaging. So what I believe is that the best thing to do is to keep on walking, keep on doing, but knowing that sometimes things can be so upsetting or debilitating that it will put you back. But if it prevents you, if these external things prevent you from getting to where you want to be, because, it's like, that's when regret kicks in, because I'll go through the motion of knowing that, a stitch in time saves nine. Like, if I didn't fix the fence, all the, like, it's I remember that being taught what that a stitch in time saves nine, and so that was an old saying, and it goes back to people having livestock, and a stitch is a section of fence, and it's like, I think it was sheep or some form of animal, goats or sheep or cattle, and the farmer goes, they see the hole in the fence, but they don't do anything about it. They saw one or two jump over the fence and run away. And so it's like, well, if they'd done something about it when they saw that thing and fixed it, they wouldn't have had this massive loss later. And that's like regret. And you know, this is the saying is to do with food and survival. So it's, you know, if you lose 9 cattle, everyone could starve through the winter. You know, it's very important to, you know, why, and this is how it can be a reminder of doing things when you can to prevent something later. And so when if your attention is focused on other things, when something important arises and you can't act on it, then the result is much worse than the initial loss, and it compounds. So being present, being observant, focusing on what you're seeing. Now, there are things where we should focus on. And this sort of goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning, where I said, many people have told me, you know, focus on your world. Don't worry about the world out there. Focus on your world. Don't get upset about the world out there. Focus on, because you can't change the stuff out there. Focus on your world. And that would be upsetting sometimes, because I saw that as a justification for allowing bad things to happen in the world. And we see this all the time, where it's like self-censorship. It's like saying, don't speak out, don't talk about these things. But yet we do live in a world where people's perceptions are being continuously manipulated and pushed in certain directions based on falsehoods, you know, or you know, to achieve a desired outcome, which is not fair or correct. And this is where we should still be observant of our greater world, and we should speak about that. And it's even more difficult when the whole notion or the whole process of discourse, speaking your mind, talking at, now people with complex trauma, we understand this. A lot of people have complex trauma also have either been silenced at developing stages in their life, or they felt like whenever they spoke out, no one listened to them. And often this happens for people who are victims of very serious things. And it is very much a part of victimization and a form of mind control to suppress people from speaking out. And this censoring is inherent on multiple levels. It happens everywhere. So if you're in academia, you become silenced because you can't speak against the norm. you know. For someone who has been through horrific things and is then silenced because people want them to stay silent, they feel like they can't speak out, you know. And so this is why these things are triggering when we see this on a greater scale, because this thing happens on a greater scale. So we've got to find a balance between stating what is fair and right, and also knowing what things are going to be detrimental to us. So we do live in a world where if you speak out about injustice or corruption or anything that is wanting to be kept a certain way, then you become then a target for people to slander you, knock you down, ridicule, all of these things to silence you. And then you get a learned behavior to not say anything. And yet we live in a world where there is, people can get on. I'm doing it right now. I'm live on YouTube, on the internet, and I'm speaking my mind. But I'm having to do it in a very particular way because I want to make my message to be like a universal thing that is related to my experience and how it relates to everything, you know. So and that's something that what I'm trying to get at is how you can still speak your mind, be positive, you know. And this is a big thing, is that we live in a world where it's called agitation propaganda or outrage attention. And this is essentially the way that the algorithms work, the way that propaganda works, and all of these things, that the way that news is then shaped and then pushed. And so it's very easy to feed into it. Now, I'm sure I've seen it over and over, and I've been provoked like that, where I've gotten angry and I've gotten on Facebook and I've gone rah 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 rah, you know, pretty harmless stuff. But it's just I've been pushed to that point where I'm like, I can't believe that this is happening or that's happening. But how is it positive? What is constructive? What can be brought from it? What can enlighten others? You know, because that's diverted away, and when being able to do that for ourselves is so important. Okay, so when we get triggered and upset, and it has this massive carry-on effect through the nervous system and stress hormones and digestive system, everything. Thought processes change because different areas of the brain shut down. Now, this is intentionally done on a greater scale if it's done in a precision way and it's done on purpose. But when it happens to us as survivors of severe trauma, it's not like the thing that triggers us could be something that has nothing to do with anyone. There's no malice. There's no intention that the thing that triggered us was done to hurt us directly. It just happens to hurt us because we are predisposed because of our prior trauma. Now, when we can control that and then we can channel it into something positive, then we can affect our own lives. This is powerful, because when we get triggered and we get hurt, and it brings us back to all the things that happen, and then it may take days or weeks or months even, depending on the trauma but then being able to stop it at a certain point and channel it and turn it around and then make use of it as a reminder. It's like, yes, I'm here, I'm growing, I'm compassionate, I care about people around me. Yes, I'm not like, I'm not going to be the richest person in the world. I'm not going to be super successful. I don't care about that. I just want to live a humble life and do what I can for myself, do what I can for others, grow as a person, make sure I'm doing things that are nourishing and enjoy them. Because if I don't, I will regret that later. I'll be sad about that later. And I already have that. I already have most of my life already gone because I've been stuck. This is the thing. Pretty much everyone who's going through a healing path of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, they've lost most of their life to this. You know, they didn't get to that point. So yes, they may. I have the same thing. You know, didn't get that job, didn't finish that qualification. You know, didn't achieve something that I was really passionate about. But then I can't worry about that. I got to be grateful for knowing that I'm at this point now and I'm going to keep progressing. You know, I hope I haven't been jumping around topics too much. I'm trying to bring the macro and the micro, you know, the person and the world around. But there are a lot of these things it's good to talk about, remind ourselves, you know, by being observant about the world helps us to be compassionate because we see when someone's in pain. You know, there's a lot of people that they're too busy with things. They don't actually see when someone needs help or someone's crying out for help, or the same reflects on the internal. If we can observe our own state, our own world around us, and how we're interacting with it, we can then go back, I need to do this for myself. This will keep me, you know, and so this will keep me going on this will nourish me. This will keep me on a path. Oh, awesome. Basic Glitch says, not at all. I follow you are speaking the truth. Awesome. Thank you. That's good. And, you know, I get things wrong too. I get things wrong all the time. But the more that's a big thing, is to be able to know that and learn from things that are, and that's why if I talk about these things, I try and put them in a perspective that it's seeing that there is the two sides. Things can go this way or things can go that way. And that it's like staying on the path is a good analogy, you know. Sometimes, you know, we get lost and all hope is lost. But then, you know, it's a good feeling to get back on the path. And in order to get back on the path, we need to first know that we're lost. And then we have to know not to get, not to overreact, not to panic, to know that doesn't, like, be present, be in the moment, know that right now I'm not on the path that I know that will take me back home or where I need to go. But I'm here now, and I will just keep going until I get back. But I'm not going to panic, and I'm not just going to keep moving. I'm going to take time. I'm going to observe my surroundings. I'm going to try and work out which way is the direction. It might mean sitting and waiting to see where the sun is. It, you know, think of what was it? Bilbo Baggins had to climb the trees to go in Mirkwood because it's so they couldn't see where they were lost. And even then, when got to the top, it was still hard to work out. But then they could sort of get a bearing. Then they were, you know. So being observant helps. Going through that review. Becoming excited about the possibilities, and also either whether it's something that you've wanted to do, like, you know, play an instrument or whatever it is, climb a mountain, you know, something, and then, or whether it's something that you did do. Oh, I used to go bushwalking all the time. I can't wait to get back to it. Getting excited about it again and knowing that you're going to get there is a big thing. And it may not, it's for some people, it can be easier. And again, this is something that can be learned. The more time you get back up and you keep, you know, but then it's not easy when complex trauma makes it difficult. There's all these other things and life, you know, and then the worry about the world, you know. So to get back to where you want to be, keep step by step making little things, little changes to get you to that point where you can get there. So I've got my hiking boots. I put my hiking boots at the door to remind me. So when I walk past them, and I picked them up the other day and I put them back to where I used to have them. And so I'm like, I'm going to have to take them and put them back down there, you know, so that they're there. So when I walk past, I'm like, yes, hike, not just a bushwalk, like a proper hike. So long before I even get to go on that, you know. I'm going to have to take a break for a minute. And I hope to return with some more positive stuff. It's all about talking positive, but also acknowledging that we do live in this world that is, there's all of these things coming at us to try and get us to get angry, upset, and for good reason for some of it, most of it really, that is things that make us upset. But if that takes away from us being able to improve our own lives, if that takes away from us to being able to be there for other people that are in our world, really right there, it's diverting us. If it's stopping us from growing and healing, it's not a good thing. So with those things, it's finding that balance, channeling it. And I think that's a good point that I'll come back to when I get back, is how to really focus on these things that can then have these ripple effects, not just for people. Like, it's great to think of, you start by growing the flowers in your own yard, and then it will spread. But it's not about it getting to help the rest of the world. Helping ourselves is the start. So I'll be back in a few minutes. And Happy New Year, everyone. I'll be here. I'm back. Thanks for being here, everyone. I just had a good chat with Dad. Being positive about things. I was talking about the possum. I was talking about how the possum seems to eat all the food that I put right too close to I've worked out I want to actually plant food for them, although they love spinach. So whenever I plant spinach, they find it and they eat it. But if I can grow enough spinach, they're only going to eat it when they don't have the other food, because this is a thing. Like, if more people had all the native plants in their garden, possums would have enough food from that. So I'm learning about I want to grow food for me. I want to grow food for me, but I also understand that I need to share it. And I also understand that their habitat has changed because so many people don't have all the natives, you know. So one thing I could do is plant some other species that, like trees, fruiting trees that fruit at different times of the year, so that they have like lots of food. And that's probably something I could do, because they're literally starving from not having all the abundance of food that they normally eat, because people generally don't plant these native plants that were there. And so they're going to eat your parsley and your spinach. You know, they're going to eat all the yummy stuff. So, and you can't blame them. So I think that's something that I've sort of a good resolution. I'm thinking of a lily pilly, Syzygium, and they produce these really good, nutritious fruits, you know, from tiny to, like, you know, grape size at the biggest. And I think we have like 600 varieties in Australia. It's one of the most, it's all over Australia, and they are really good plants. We used to have a big one in the very top front garden near the road. I could plant a few. The beauty about them too is there's so many different sizes. They grow massive. If you've got like the rainforest version, they can grow massive, or the creek version. But then they also have like all different varieties. And because of this, they flower and fruit at different times of the year, which would then give the possums different, they got food for longer. And then yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think that's something I'll focus on. So yeah, I was talking about I think a really big point I'm thinking about, and I haven't even arrived to what my point, the outcome of my point. I don't even know what things that I will be saying to get to that point. And that's what I like about these chats, is that it gives me freedom to think and freedom to talk. And I appreciate that a lot. I think a lot, and I care a lot, and I worry a lot. And here's something with that. People who've been through severe trauma or complex trauma often become hypersensitive. They become more aware. They become more that, and it's a difficult thing, because you become more focused and aware, and this carries across to lots of other things, right? Hypersensitivity, hyper awareness. So just like a sine wave creates hypo sensitive, hypo awareness, and this is categorized, as these are seen as traits. So you can be hyper focused, hyper aware, and then you get triggered and you become hypo. You shut down. Or you become passive or unaware. And here's the thing within that complex trauma, and this is something that I don't want to go into negative stuff, but this is the thing, is people who are trained in this stuff, but also just narcissists that have worked this stuff out, and psychopaths, they actually know how to put you in that state, and you can't do anything about it. You basically are frozen. They put you in a freeze, and this goes back to the attention thing. Whether it's someone doing this directly, whether it's something you see on the media or the internet that gets you upset, puts you into that state, or whether it's just a conversation you have with someone and they say something that they didn't realize it triggered you that well, or it didn't trigger you that way. They had no intention to actually put you in that state. And then you also have people who are like doing that maliciously, on purpose, regardless of who or what or why or how. Bring it back to remembering that you are strong, you are capable, and you can do these things. You can get through this, and you can actually make it positive. To me, that's what I see as something that is, you know, valiant or valor. It's being able to be in a difficult situation, having someone or external thing affect you, but you can not lose your position, and to adequately respond, and also to be there, which is very important, is to be able to be there for not only the people around you, but to be able to identify who is being neglected in this situation and hurt more than you, and to make sure that they're okay and that their care and their needs are being met. Often in these situations, I'm talking about very complex social situations, and I'm trying to bring it from, and this is the thing, I started with the hypo, right? So you get an overwhelm, right? And then there's the other words that are associated with these, right, is cascade and collapse. Now, think about, rather than cascade or collapse, what about a slow and steady landing and arriving to where you want to be? It's still following a trajectory, rather than to think of like ascending or going up or anything like that. It's following with that motion. I'll give you an example. So we live in a world where division is a big thing, and this happens on all scales. It happens intentionally and unintentionally, conscious and unconscious, accidental and contrived. You know, when these things happen, if we can, rather than become upset, enraged, and then react, if we can channel that in a way that we not only care for others around in our discourse, but to also not only like subtly, inconsequentially enlighten them, we enlighten ourselves. Each time we can react without reacting, we're acting. So rather than taking something coming at us, it's channeling that away, but getting danger out of the way, taking away the fear and the angst or the anxiety or the frustration, but somehow focus on, rather than how can we progress without focusing on the negative. This is something that happens all the time, and I did mention I'd use an example. So we live in this world of division, polarization, and how do we counteract that? Well, if someone says something to you and it's like to try and get a reaction, or to try and get you to respond in a way that would either confirm or deny or to push you in a direction. This is all manipulation and coercion. It's taking over it's not communication. It's actually a different form because it's not constructive. So, you could say that it's a destructive communication or a violent communication. And then how do you counteract it? So if someone is trying to get you to get upset about something, then you can qualify that it is unfortunate that we live in a world where this division exists, and then shine a light on the fact that, as we know, situations are complex. There's differing views and differing sides. There is often multiple parties that are trying to shape a particular view or perception, and often very powerful groups trying to do that. And we know that this distraction, this energy capture, it doesn't serve any of us. It just keeps the division further and further, and it perpetuates ignorance. So how do you counteract that? Shining a light on the complexity, and it has to be using something valid, but showing that, well, there's this, but there's also this, It's a diversion. It's actually using diversion, but in a constructive way. Because it's actually, you're diverting away from something that is inherently being used to elicit a reaction or an outcome. By stating facts that are able to be realized within that same system or paradigm or world view or world existence, then and if people try and say, oh, that's got nothing to do with this, then you can continue with that. You can say, well, yes, it does. And you can say, well, you can even reduce the reason why, you can dispel the whole reason why people will want to have you get angry about a particular thing. So you're still honoring you're still honoring the fact that people are upset about things. There's multiple views, but it's a complex issue. Now, often they call things like a wedge argument, because it splits, but it's also, a wedge is something that is very fine, that a wedge can also lift something or pull it down. If you think about what a wedge is in carpentry, a wedge can split, a wedge can rise, or a wedge can lower, but a wedge can also counteract. A wedge can support. In a lot of joints, in carpentry, in framing, a wedge or a peg can be the thing that keeps the joint together and holds the whole structure strong. So the very same thing that can tear things apart and is often used that way can be used in a different way to attenuate, modulate, compensate or align. And a wedge is also malleable. If a wedge is being used like a shim, it can be moved until it's at the point where it's getting to that desired effect. So something that is commonly used to make things separate or difficult can also be the thing that fixes things or brings things together stronger. This is a big point that I'm trying to make, is that and it's difficult because I'm not using too much examples but I'm trying to use ways of thinking that we can identify as, like, when someone's trying to separate, or, like, for instance, a wedge argument is something that polarizes or separates people, right? So just take that wedge and use it in a different way to either lift or bring it down, or to make it stronger. And how is that done? That's done by being compassionate towards all the parties that are involved, acknowledging things. I acknowledge all my faults in order to understand where I sit in the world and how I can progress. It's a very common trait of either the individual or the group, collective, organization, institution, and keeps going along, to not acknowledge their part. You know, once you can acknowledge, for instance, not being able to do the things that I want to do, make art, I have to acknowledge I could have gotten out of bed. I could have, like, stopped what I was doing that day or this day and just gone and picked up the guitar. And then I could say, yeah, but I was depressed, or, you know, I need to be in a better mood. Well, no, that's okay. I'm acknowledging that even though I couldn't because of other factors, I have too much of an emotional attachment to playing an instrument or making art. It means so much to me that I can't just pick up a pen. But I know that I could in the past, but then things got difficult and I couldn't. I acknowledge that. So I can't blame all the other things, because I know that I've been in those difficult situations and I have made that art. I have done those things. I'm using art as an example. It can be anything. It could be gardening, it could be eating nutritious food, it could be reading, it could be anything. So acknowledgement is a big thing. So being able to say, and this is a big thing, is that often when they're not arguments if people are demanding or they're forcing an opinion on you. It's only an argument if you're allowed to speak in return and state your case and to declare that, and so by acknowledging that an issue is complex and that the parties involved are often have their own, input that have influenced or been associated with the situation, then that's the start. Then you can go a little bit further, but focusing on the positives. Often people will focus on a negative associated with the world or something, and they'll say, this is a certain way. I'm guilty of this myself, and that's why I have to keep bringing it back and then taking myself to account about how I view the world, how I react to it. So looking at the merits, the positives, what has been achieved, and I could cite examples about all these things. And people say to me, "Oh, you talk all this negative about all this stuff," and I was like, "No, I acknowledge that all of these things that have got very negative or horrible aspects to them, there's also the good side." And this is the thing. It's difference between dualism and monism. If you can look at something as being one way, but without accepting that there is two or more things, contributing factors, then you're denying something. So by doing that, by sharing and accepting, being aware and accepting that things are more complex and being able to express it too. It's very hard for me to cite examples because if I'm talking about things that are often contentious, the wedge issues are contentious. They are used to divide people. Fear, uncertainty are an easy way to shape or manipulate people's perceptions or how they're going to how their views are going to be on a particular thing. And it's a very difficult thing. So because humans are very much trained in following the norm, following the herd, not just because, even if they're open-minded, they can be censured, sanctioned, they can be restrained, they can be, and then, there's the fear, and then there's the unknowing. So acknowledging the unknowing is a big thing. People are afraid to say they don't know. It's easier for people to have an opinion and to go a certain way. Now, it's very easy when there are facts that can be verified, and if it's something that's across multiple things, then that makes that even easier. but you shouldn't have to even have an argument. These wedge issues, these things that make us so afraid to talk about things that we should be able to talk about, it's like they're put in a way that it either polarizes or it silences, and it's really sad. And so focusing on the virtues of it could be a corrupt system or a broken system, you know, what are the things that are holding it back? Or is it being constrained? Is it being manipulated or controlled at a certain point, which then makes any, like, there's a difference between a valid and a sound argument. And it gets more complex, the more complex the issue. And when it gets to that point, finding what connects between human decency, or the fact that we shouldn't let these things tear us apart. Focusing on something that's actionable, positive, something that actually adheres to the needs of the parties involved. Because regardless of whether a situation's often situations are unfair and unbalanced. You know, we live in a world where either the system's rigged or people game the system because it's got flaws. Then you also have people gang up and bully. They're grouped by numbers. So it doesn't matter if someone's right or correct, you know, on one side, and someone's wrong on the other side. It then can come down to how many people are voicing their opinion on one side or the other. So bringing it back to what connects, what's important, and what's going to help everyone move forward, because complex issues don't get necessarily solved straight away. Sometimes they might never get solved. So it's not so much, so it could be compromise. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing, you know. I think another point to do with it all is knowing when to and when not to personalize things, because things can affect things that are in a greater world. It still affects personally, because either it will progressively make things worse if nothing gets done, or it's a moral issue that, you know, is not necessarily being treated with enough respect. That can be all it is that needs to be said, is that this is, if someone brings up something that is trying to elicit a reaction, or to try and polarize or keep you in a position, you can just say, look, this is a complex issue, and that you know. There are arguments that can't be won on either side, even if both sides have got an argument. And in that situation, isn't it better that it's difficult when there's there's grievances, you know, and so it's hard for people to let go. How do you forgive the bully or the aggressor or the attacker, or how do you, if you've been through those sorts of things where it's institutional, where there's been malfeasance, all that sort of stuff, how do you resolve that and then still have faith in systems? You know, and that's why I often say, you know, there's always good people working within systems, even if they've failed. People make mistakes. There should be accountability. There should be all these things. But we do live in a world where there's a whole bunch of issues that are very important that people aren't even allowed to have an opinion on because they are polarized and they're polarizing paradigms. And so when those things occur, that's when you can remind people that, you know what, the world's pretty difficult. There's a lot of injustice. There's a lot of bad things that go on. Let's focus on making the world better. Often even if there isn't a primary outcome, there can be secondary, tertiary outcomes that are just as important. So it could be like, this is a good thing. If there is something that is unbalanced or has been weighted a certain way and is a polarizing issue, regardless, like acknowledging that, being aware, acknowledging, knowing not to go into that, because it's not gonna make, some arguments can never be, you're never going to convince someone who has got a view on something that they believe that is a certain way. So finding that connection, that common thing that is beneficial for everyone, that will make everyone's life better, is a good thing. I know it sounds like I'm just, it's such a difficult thing. Sounds like I'm going around in circles, but this is like the crux. This is like the thing, you know. Not only is these things occur on a personal level, they also occur on a greater level. And we experience the difficulties of it because of the effect, you know. We can spend so much time trying to debate something that where if you have a polarized argument where rather than trying to convince the other side, finding what you can cooperate on, what you can find to be together. Now, It's not going to work in all situations, but it can work. And it certainly won't work when you've got like a very aggressive dominant side against a weaker side. And so that's even more of a reason to bring it back to what matters is safety, care, and appeasement. It's 2026. How cool is that? 2026. It's going to be a big year for me. There's been people here. I know Basic Glitch has been here in the chat. There's been other people here in the stream, which is good. I hope just me speaking my mind about navigating the world in a positive way. And it's the most difficult thing is those most difficult arguments that we don't even want to be part of. There's so much division that gets created out of nothing. Okay, we live in a world where people they use attacks, the ad hominem attacks, rather than to even listen to the other side, and that's really sad. And it's often a side of ignorance, or an inability to empathize with the other side, and that's really sad. And that's why it just perpetuates. But it's used as a common basic tool for dominance. Whoever speaks the loudest and is able to slander the other side and silence them through fear of being able to speak out will be able to, for a time, for generally, they'll just be able to keep using that. Eventually that'll wear out, but it seems to be the way that, and it's also, it debases their arguments because they won't even listen to the other side. And that's saying something, isn't it? Oh, Basic Glitch says, we know it's a big year for you and we know you'll be great at it. Oh, thank you so much, Basic. Thank you for supporting us too. You've helped so much. Everyone who's supported us, thank you so much. It's going to be a massive year. Like in 100 days, I'm going to be on my way to the other side of the world. And then in another 30 to 60 days, 30, 50 days, something like that, we'll be bringing into the world our baby. We're going to be, it's very exciting. Here we go. Book Dove Reads is here as well. Book Dove says, hey Luke, hi everyone, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too. And I look forward to more of you reading. I look forward to doing more reading too. So,
And yeah, basically it says, hi, happy new year and good luck.
oh, thank you. And Book Dove's, I'm sure she appreciates that too. I'm just thinking about how awesome it's going to be this year. So much going on. Just this month, I've got all this stuff. Like, I got some work to help pay for stuff because we got so many expenses. We got all this support. You know, basically, she was one of those people that helped with our GoFundMe, and it's helped so much. We appreciate that so much. And it's, yeah. Just this month, I've got so much going on. You know, like I said, in 100 days, I'll be on an aeroplane going to the other side of the world, and that's full on, you know. So I've got a couple of days a week work, whatever I can get work I can get with my business, and I've got all the things I've got to prepare here at home. I've got to keep the garden going, both gardens, and I've got to also set them up for the next season, you know, for after summer. I've got to be all this stuff. I can't wait. Like, as soon next week, I've got a couple days work, and the rest of the time I'm doing my nature therapy videos, and I've like flat out heaps of stuff going on. Garden, nature therapy, business, mindfulness videos. I'll try and be doing more streaming. You know, I want to make some art. Look, that's inspired me. Basically, it's got a guitar, and I'm like, well, I haven't played guitar for ages, so I got to get back into it. So look, I'm going to do that. You know, but it reminds me of how special this year is for me. You know, it's a massive year. My dad said that. He goes, "This is a really big year for you," and I'm like, "Yep." I'm going to become a father, and you know, that's going to be awesome. I'm going to make the most of everything, you know. And just getting to this point here on this journey with like sharing everything on YouTube, like this community, and it's been amazing healing journey, and it's made me a lot stronger and more aware, you know, things, you know, and it's been wild things have been going on. So people have seen me fall and get back up again. And that's what it's all about. You know, we keep going, we keep doing. Sometimes it takes a bit of time. You need to heal, you need to rest, and then you get. Today I had I ate for breakfast. I ate 3 eggs with salt and pepper, and then I had muesli with yogurt. And like my body all day was just going, you know. And then I had some vitamins and electrolytes, and like my body was just like, you know, this is awesome. It's amazing when you just do some things that it's just simple things can help so much. So I've been talking. Here we go. I've been talking so long. I was like about to say, like, what's everyone been doing?
Book Dove Reed says, oh, I love that. I'm sure he's proud of you and excited to be a grandpa. Such an enormous year. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. I think so too. I think, and I've seen that. I've seen it. So I've seen him, and like him seeing me. Just, it's amazing. Like, even though like things are a little bit, what do you call it? Like, there's all this stuff I want to do around the house, and I just got to wait a bit of time before I get right into that. But everything's going to be transformed into this really good environment soon. But he's seen how serious I am, and he's been there with me through all the things going on and the way I'm sort of dealing with all that. And it's really good. He's really amazing support, and I'm so grateful and fortunate for all that connection between everyone here, and people around me that support me, and being able to be there for my fiance and she's there for me. It's amazing, like, how much we've been there for each other recently, knowing what we're both going through, being on opposite sides of the planet, and going through some serious heavy stuff. I think we're going to be really awesome at dealing with, like, whatever difficulties in the future, and how we can, like, be there for each other has been a big thing. And um, it just shows our love has become stronger and stronger, and also, like, this community here is so amazing that I haven't been, like, streaming regularly like I used to for a long time. So it's been sort of difficult for people to be here all that often. And so, and I do the streams randomly. I have been doing them randomly. So it's like, I don't expect for people to join because they're probably too busy doing other stuff or whatever, and they might not see if I send them a message, or if they're on or they don't see it, because it's just like, it just so happen to be streaming it. This is the thing, like, I stream it when it sort of suits me, and it's the middle of the night in America. You know what I mean? It's a decent time in Europe, and that's cool. And so, like, I love that. I love how, like, we're at different times. I want to get back to doing streams at different times, and I guess the garden ones. It's been frustrating with when I do the gardening streams with my phone. It doesn't, like, it looks all pixelated, and it didn't used to be like that. It used to be like better resolution. There's something going on with the data. There's something stopping it from streaming properly, which is upsetting. And that sort of stops me from doing it more often, because I mean, maybe I just need a new phone or something. I don't know. I don't want to buy a new phone just so I can. But I like that. I like that, being able to do it, and everyone's there who
if it works well with the time, they can join. And I love that interaction, you know. So much of the internet has been this sort of, I mean, it's so different, basically. Like, so, I mean, I love watching other people live streams. I generally, it's usually podcasts doing streams, you know. And maybe I should follow what, like, all the gardening channels I follow. They just use, I've got the awesome camera, so I should just do that. I should just spend a day, set up the tripod, film myself making the garden with proper microphones, and it's not going to be all pixelated. And then I can do a premiere, and then I can be there in the chat, so people can join the chat and we can chat about stuff. So it'll be just like being live like this, except we can be watching the garden, and it'll be clear. So look, that'll be my thing now for this year, is to really focus on that. I'm going to do that. And then I'll set, whenever I make a gardening video, I'll like set it for like to premiere in a few days' time, so people know when it's going to happen. And if they can be there, they'll know that I'll be in the chat, and other people from the channel will be in the chat, so we can all have a chat while we're watching the video. So that's going to be cool. And Book Dove Reed says, for me, it's kind of hard to imagine what life's like for those that live their whole life in one place, lol. Yeah, well, it is like, you know, I've never really moved around much, but I have lived in, how many places have I lived in? I was born, I grew up in this house, and then I moved back here. But yeah, I lived at 4 other places. So besides when I worked on a farm, but I was still renting in Brisbane. I've lived within like 10 kilometers of here. I've never really gone far like that. So I sort of feel like I haven't really gone far. But then I have, you know, for long periods of time, you know, I've lived in houses, you know, away from here. But yeah, it is. I know that you've had moved around a lot, you know. I think that's an interesting sort of, I'd be happy to just, I'd love to be born in a valley, a hidden valley somewhere up in the mountains, and then spend my entire life there. I'd be happy with that. But then I'd also be happy if I moved around everywhere lots of times. It's interesting. It's an interesting way to sort of, because I think there's this sort of unknowing of like how things are going to turn out. Like, I had no idea that I would be like, especially, I had no idea I'd be traveling to the other side of the planet to be there for the birth of my child, our child next year, this year, 2026. I hadn't, like, you know, it's pretty wild, but it's awesome. We're so excited. We've got a name for our baby girl. I won't share it here, but it's a pretty special name. Anyone who's heard the name would know how special it is. And we both named her, like, the first name happened to be what I said, and my fiance named the second name, and they're both beautiful names. So it's really exciting this year. And look, when I'll speak to my fiance about how much we share about things, but we're going to share some travel or something that we get to do together, and the nature and what we're up to and things. We got lots of, we're still working on the not-for-profit. It's sort of put, a lot of that went to the side while all this stuff been going on. So, but we're like been talking about doing charity work and coming up with ways of helping people when I'm there, because I don't have a working visa, so I can't like get a job. I have to like volunteer, and also I'll be a parent, so that'll be my job as well. So we've been working all that stuff out, and yeah, it's going to be a full-on year. Awesome year. It's going to be an awesome year. So we're excited. But yeah, it's I'll tell you what, I'm glad I talked about all that stuff tonight. I know it might have sounded like I was speaking in like allegory and speaking in like code type, talking about the form of things rather than how, like, and what. But I was trying to make it universal. I was trying to make it so that, what are the defining factors? What are, in order to like really yeah, it's very important to understand what's going on, and to understand it from not only your perspective but from the other people's perspective, and to be able to empathize with their situation and also yourself, so that you can bridge between those, and rather than it being a conflict or it's actually bridging, it's actually connecting, so it's a big thing, and we're constantly faced with this. I do like that my explanation of wedge issues, wedge topics, because a wedge can also be used in so many ways, and it can be used in so many important constructive ways. It's just most often used in a way to separate and divide. But
Excuse me. I've been talking so much. I look forward to doing these streams more often. I love these chats. I love just speaking about stuff, and I think relating it to all of us that have been through trauma, we've got a lot to share. We experience and we see things, but we don't always get to express it. And I'm talking about how I see things and how I also see things in a universal or in a collective way. So that doesn't mean I'm right about any of what I say. Like I often try and remind that, my experience, if it's received and shared as a common experience, that's really, it's good. It's really good for me. And hearing that back, like Glitch saying before, how much, so it means a lot to me. And we can all get something from it. But yeah, it's been awesome. This is the longest stream I've done for ages. Thanks for being here, everyone. I'm gonna end the stream here. I'm gonna keep doing streams as much as possible, and I hope I was positive. My whole thing tonight was to be able to talk about difficult things but remaining positive, and I hope that worked. And I'd like to formalize how I could, my interpretation of how to remain positive in a conversation with someone, or how to not get upset about something really upsetting that's going on in the world that you can't do anything about. But how do you even talk about it with your people around you? And so it'd be good to be able to sort of talk more in detail about those things, because I think everyone, I know that they do work, some of these methods I talked about today, because and it's not deceptive conversational, it's not adversary, it's constructive. And that's a big thing. And it's still difficult because often I'm talking about situations where you're either on the back foot, you're being forced or pushed, manipulated, coerced, whatever, or they're manipulating facts, they're not listening to both sides of the argument. Knowing when it's just impossible to even get an outcome, how do you even deal with that? So, you can agree to disagree, but like, what in that situation, it's still going to hurt, because you might feel more emotional attachment or passionate about the morals or the meaning of something than the other party, and they're the ones who are being aggressive. So that can be upsetting, but it's also a sign that if they're not willing to see that, Much love to everyone. Happy New Year 2026. It's going to be an awesome year. I've got so much awesome stuff going on. I can't wait to get back out in nature in the next week and get some more stuff, like video of nature, me doing the bushwalking, some mindfulness videos.
I'm going to get back into guitar. It's going to be awesome. Much love to everyone. Look, I hope you all have going to keep growing and healing this year and being there for others. And it could be, you know, we could be isolated and not really be able to be around other people. We could be so hurt by other people that it can hurt. But there are good people out there. And so one thing I've found is finding community that helps. Finding a community. And that's what I love about here. This is like a community. So I'm going to keep doing this, and I hope to catch up soon. I love you all. Much love.